Time to catch up with our friend Kaylor Hodges over at the USL show, at the USL show on all the socials, at Kaylor Hodges on all of the socials. Traditionally, Kaylor, during the postseason, we have you on Tuesdays, but because of the breaking news and the developing stories that are happening in Championship and League One, figured it was important to have you back to talk about things. Thanks for peeling back your schedule and hanging out with us again.
Always glad to be here. Granted, wish it was under different circumstances, but always excited to chat with you, John.
No doubt. All right, let's talk about Memphis.
Sure.
And it seems to have been a shock to everyone inside the organization that Memphis 901 no longer exists as we know it. From the announcement and the release of information on the commercial appeal, Memphis 901 no longer exists. Santa Barbara Sky basically takes the license that exists with that franchise, and now they will be in USL Championship in 2026, not the originally anticipated USL League One entry. They're moving up in class. What have you and your sources been able to glean from this?
Yeah, this is a shock to everybody. I mean, with the connections the USL show has, we usually get inklings of things happening a while. And there was a conversation that made its way to me that Memphis would not be in the championship next year. But even that source did not see this happening. And I think that just in general, just overall shock, the players genuinely had no clue. Coaching staff seemingly had no clue. This was out of nowhere. And as for Santa Barbara, I think this is borderline the more fascinating side of this, where they have drugged their feet on being a League One team. They said, we're going to join the league, and they had the whole thing of here's our crest, here's who we are, we're going to have a Super League team, and then decide to not exist for months at a time. And suddenly they pop up with this. And there's certainly conversation to be had of, were they just buying time to wait for a team to fold and buy their way into the championship? Because otherwise they would have been blocked through California being logged. I think that's an interesting conversation that we're having to see. Obviously, there's no sources on that's actually the case, but it's certainly interesting how their first sign of life in months is the fact that they were able to buy their way into the championship rather than where they originally bought into League One. I think that one thing that's important to note here, and I think a lot of people have pointed this out, but I just want to make sure your listeners know, is that this was a transfer of rights. This was not a trade of rights. Memphis will not be in League One. Memphis will not exist next year. And because of the way the transfer of the rights work, Memphis has nothing now. The city of Memphis has nothing. In order for Memphis Soccer USL to come back, they are going to have to buy their rights into the league once again. That you're looking at 20 to 30 million dollars for them to join the championship again. There's a world where the USL league office gives a discount because they know the owners, they do all that kind of stuff. They want them back in the market. But if they treat them as a true expansion team or a Phoenix club, essentially, they're going to have to pay 20 million, 30 million to exist. This is not like Oklahoma City, where they can just show back up when they're ready. They're going to have to put real investment just to come back, which this whole hiatus thing makes it seem more like it's over.
The reasons and rationale in all of this, I would suggest looking at Lawrence Dockery's work. Also,
Yes.
there's an article at the Commercial Appeal where Jonah Dillon has kind of broken things down and given the lay of the landscape. For those that aren't aware, they play at AutoZone Park. And
Yes.
with the ties to the Memphis Redbirds, it's understandable. And it is another baseball stadium that is configured with a soccer field inside. They go from the first base foul line down into left field, and you have all of the things that folks will look at when it comes to baseball fields, shaving of mounds, planting of grass if you want to do that kind of thing, or you run from grass to dirt to grass and filling in those kinds of holes. The idea being Memphis 901 needed their own soccer-specific stadium there in town, and there were
Mhm.
plans that were laid out. One, do they go to the Micro Soccer Complex in East Memphis? And this was a point that was brought up by Bart Keeler when he was on the morning show on Thursday, where you have attendance roughly in the couple of thousands there at AutoZone. And I understand the rationale as to why, because once again, you're putting dates into a stadium that is yours and you're continuing to keep that as an active resource amongst your family. Mike Rose, for those not aware, 2,500 seat stadium. You could, if you wanted to go down that road, renovate it to say 4 or 5,000. It's not a long-term solution, according to Jonah, but it's another temporary solution. Then the Liberty Park plan, which was where Memphis 901's ownership, that was where they were throwing their collective weight. You know, when Lynn Family comes online in 2020, you're talking about a stadium mid-teens. That's what you're looking at. So October of 22, the plan was to build Liberty Park, 10,000 seats on the property of what used to be the site of the Mid-South Coliseum, which is just basically sitting there now. You've got near the Liberty Bowl, that whole sports element that is there, that sports property, that where folks would gather for various things. Price tag was high. You're looking at $350 million. Mayor goes to the state and says, okay, I need $350 million for it. State signs off on it. But then you have your franchises and your universities come back and say, yeah, we need to renovate things. The Grizzlies come back and say, we need to renovate the Forum. Memphis comes in and says, well, we need to renovate the Liberty Bowl. Redbirds wanted money to renovate AutoZone Park. And so 1, 2, 3, that means that Memphis 901 and Liberty Park would have been 4. And that ended up going by the wayside. And that puts us where we are, where 901 was looking at Liberty Park. Liberty Park's resources that were given to them by the state as a part of this project, they end up being a distant fourth. Everybody else gets theirs, and 901 doesn't get Liberty Park, and that's where we are right now.
Yeah, and one thing that is really important to note here is that they got it signed off, and then specifically the Grizzlies came in and said, we need to renovate," and I think that the number that came in for them was about 250 million, if I remember reading that right.
230, yeah.
Um, and that's kind of what threw a stalemate into this entire thing, where it's not even just that, there's conversations on the Redbirds in their existence at this point because of what's happening with the Grizzlies. And from the state or from the city of Memphis in the state of Tennessee, you're always going to pick the Grizzlies because they're going to bring in people. Their basketball is one of the biggest booming sports in the country right now. And they have some of the biggest superstars in the world right now, especially when you look at Ja Morant. Um, you're going to capitalize on that. You'd be stupid not to. Where this leaves Memphis, 901 FC that is you don't have the stadium. You could stay at AutoZone, but that's just not viable at this point, especially with the needed renovations to AutoZone. It's just not going to work. The other option is the University of Memphis Stadium, which is right at 25,000. They could renovate it to 5,000 to fit the D2 requirements. But if you look at their quote unquote friends down the I-22 from Birmingham Legion, when they renovated UAB Stadium from about 1,000 to 5,000, that was a multi-million dollar project in of itself. It's not like putting up some metal bleachers cost, just a couple of grand. That is a multi-million dollar project. And so if you're saying we don't have the money or we don't want to put in the money for that for something we don't own, again, understandable. Um, you're looking at going to, I think Mike Davis, I do believe is right, and leaving it as it is at 25,000 or 2,500, excuse me. And that means you're dropping to League One.
Yeah.
And clearly, Memphis did not see League One as a viable option. And it kind of makes sense when you say, hey, we were sitting at about 3,000 people per game. We'd be capping out at 2,500. We're losing about 500 fans per match. We're losing out on that much ticket revenue on something we don't even own. And it just feels like we're just going to be burning more money than we're keeping. It's not worth having this around. And I kind of put it out on Twitter, X, the other day, yesterday,
Mhm.
where I said that League One needs to have a conversation with themselves on teams would rather die than go to League One. We saw Santa Barbara hold out to go to the championship. We see Union Omaha playing to go to the championship. Lexington got out of League One as fast as possible, where League One is just not seen as a viable option. And that just leaves, Memphis and the USL in a bizarre position where they had an option. It was University of Memphis soccer stadium, but the League One aspect of it is just doesn't work. And there is a side that's in some people, and this has been the conversation of how do you make it more viable. You're looking at a national league that pays similar, not the same, it is certainly less, but similar wages to the championship. They are doing just as much, if not more, traveling because of how spread apart League One is. So they're doing even more traveling than championship teams are. And here's the important part: they do not carry the same capital that USL Championship does. Here's time to get into the finances part of this because this is all that matters in sports. Really, it's a business. It cost about $5 million to join League One. It cost about 20 million to 30 million to join the championship. And you'd say, well, why wouldn't you want to join the cheaper one? Because that would save you lots of money. You don't get that capital back. That your net worth is tied into capital, not how much you actually have. And these owners' net worth is everything. And so, why in the world would you put your net worth as $25 million less if you're still going to be losing similar, if not even more money than the teams that are worth more? It just does not make sense in the slightest. And League One is going to have to figure something out. They either need to regionalize immediately to cut down on travel costs, or they need to cut down on cost of entry massively, or else you're going to continue to see teams choosing to fold, then drop down.
And you're also seeing in in other USL markets, Omaha specifically, they are getting their own stadium. They're getting to wander away from Warner Park in Papillon. That is online for them. New Mexico United is in line to have a soccer specific stadium. So there are cases in both League One and in Championship where folks understand from the franchise perspective, we need to get out of baseball stadia. We need to have our own specific element here where we can be soccer and soccer only. So you do have markets that are understanding what needs to be done right now, just not enough of them by comparison and percentage when it comes to championship in League One, where you've got folks that are building things. Colorado Springs with Widener Field downtown, soccer specific. Spokane building one Spokane stadium, soccer specific. And then the markets that see this and they're like, okay, we need to do this too. So you're seeing that in Omaha and New Mexico right now. Anybody else that is looking to work their way into soccer specific stadia that you and the rest of the folks at the USL show have been able to glean?
Well, I mean, don't forget about your friends up north, Greenville Triumph themselves.
True.
Like
Yeah.
they're
Right.
getting one themselves. I mean, we saw Tormenta has theirs themselves. They've built their own stadium. Big pile of dirt still there, and I hope it never goes away. I hope they keep a perpetual pile of dirt down there. Um, but there's a lot of from what I'm hearing and what we are hearing, there's a lot of scouting, basically. Let's scout land, let's scout this, let's scout that. I Right now, a lot of the teams are focusing more on the training facility side of this because at the very least, training facility is investment that keeps them around and it's a lot more affordable that also, frankly, they can sell off if they need to. Like teams can sell their training facility to somebody else, something else. There's going to be some local high school that wants to buy it or some local university that wants to buy it and they can do something with it. So a lot of these clubs are looking more at the training facility side of it. There's conversations, there always are. Indy is still looking, El Paso is looking. A lot of these teams are looking, but what does that really mean until we get what we essentially saw out of Memphis, which was the state signing off on it like we kind of see in Sacramento right now, where the city signs off on it unanimously, you're probably not going to see a whole lot of movement. And you're just going to have to hope that you don't have another team in your market that can kind of come over your head like Memphis.
Before we get into USL League One and the news out of Northern Colorado, John Morrissey raised an interesting point that we brought up on the show on Wednesday. With Memphis 901 going away, you now have a profoundly uneven East and West.
Mm-hmm.
And now you wonder who is going to be the team that gets slid over into the West for next year. And just looking at the map, it might be your hometown club in Birmingham that ends up being the new Memphis 901 and shifts from East to West.
Birmingham is the most logical choice, and I would be shocked if that's not it. However, there is a surprise mystery team that is being floated around. Um, not not going to let that one be too privy information. I just want it to be known that it is hilarious what it would be. But if you're speaking logically, it's Birmingham. There are 4 teams kind of on this line. It's Birmingham, Indy, Louisville, and Detroit. Those are the 4 teams on the line to go to the West. Let's be completely brutally honest here. Louisville's never going to the West. They're never going to do that. You're looking at who is Louisville's biggest rival, Indy 11. They're not going to separate those two to have the reverse fixture.
Right.
And then you look at Detroit City, you say, look at their away days. You have Pittsburgh, you have Indy, you have Louisville. Those are all so close together that you would be separating them from some of the better away days and better travels that you could actually have in the league. So you have one team that's on an island right now, which is Birmingham. Naturally, I think that you're going to be seeing Birmingham make the slide over. I think the correct answer is to go to 3 divisions, and then you play everybody in your division 2 times, home and away. You play everybody else in the outside divisions once, and that leaves your schedule open to about 8 matches you're not getting, a la Jägermeister Cup. Force the hand of the owners to join the Jägermeister Cup, have it be a proper league cup, and go forward.
I fibbed. I got one more thing. The Miami
Okay.
FC, it looked like they were trying to find a different place to play for next year, and it looks like they might be aiming toward Homestead. Am I hearing that correctly?
Yeah, so, well, kinda. They have the ownership that is bought um, into the Miami FC, which does include Ricardo Silva still, obviously. Um, they are opening up their own 10,000 seat stadium that has soccer in mind, in Homestead, Florida. So the kind of natural progression is that that's where they're going to go, but I'm not sure when the plans to even start construction on that would be. The natural place, I think, is going to be they go to FIU's soccer stadium and just have it be that, get like a 1-year waiver essentially before they can start building down in Homestead. But there is a conversation that they can find somewhere else to play. The issue is that, and this is the thing when everybody says, well, just play at a high school, play at a college. You got to find somewhere that sells beer, straight up. You got to find somewhere that sells beer. And if it doesn't sell beer, it's not an option. And you're not looking at many stadiums across the US that are at least 5,000 people that allow the sale of alcohol, because high schools aren't going to allow that. There's a large part of smaller stadiums. Well, okay. A lot of the smaller stadiums in the US are typically private owned, and a lot of the private owned colleges are a Christian college.
Yeah.
And they're not going to allow the sale of alcohol either. So you're left with this conundrum where you really in these cities have, like, even in somewhere as big as Miami, you're looking at 3 possible places for them to play, FIU being one of them. I haven't researched it, but I doubt there's that many options in Homestead, Florida that fit USL championship requirements and allow the sale of alcohol. So you're kind of stuck at FIU.
Unless you've come up with something that would be what we've seen in Daytona and other stadia, where you create a temporary facility like we've seen in WSL in the past, in the infield at the racetrack, to where you create that vibe of of a multi-sport venue kind of a thing. League One. Northern
Yes.
Colorado was very, very. It was an interesting thing to come across our radar, and a hat tip to you and everybody at the USL show for bringing this to light. And from our friends at Law 360, Jade Martinez Pogue, team owner hits USL with fraud suit. And this has to do with the owners of Northern Colorado Hailstorm suing the USL for fraud in California state court, alleging the league never paid the team prize money for winning the inaugural USL League One Jägermeister Cup and uses league funds to promote its other products while not helping out its League One teams. Future Legends LLC, which created Hailstorm after buying the franchise rights in League One, in a Tuesday complaint, alleged USL never paid the team the $100,000 in prize money for winning the inaugural Jägermeister Cup. It's a lot of legalese, but at the end of the article, that Law 360, you notice that Future Legends is represented by Jeff Katofsky of Katofsky Law. Basically, Jeff Katofsky and Katofsky Law are representing themselves, considering
Yeah.
that they own Hailstorm. So this is not a stretch where you're hiring outside counsel and you're trying to sue on counts of common law fraud, concealment, and conversion. What do you know about this?
Okay, so this is where I am going to be floating between sources and personal conjecture.
Okay.
Okay.
All right. So just
And
make
I
sure when you do that, separate your
Yes.
aisles when you do it.
Yes, I want people to know that there is stuff that is real, there is stuff that is personal conjecture, and personal opinions will not be influenced by sources. I want that to be known.
Mhm.
So, what we do know, we have Northern Colorado suing for everything that you just laid out for not receiving their $100,000 of prize money. And the other part of this that I found actually the most interesting and something that they may have a case on where they might actually get some money out of this is improper use of funds where they feel that they were not where the league was not protecting clubs and they were using the money that was supposed to protect clubs to spend on promoting other league assets essentially. What and this is personal conjecture, what my opinion on that is instead of doing things to protect clubs like what's happening in Northern Colorado, like the club just never having money to begin with, where they are saying, why are you advertising, taking that money and advertising select soccer balls or Charlie kits? Or why are you promoting USL championship on CBS when we are a League One team? That's kind of the vibe that I'm getting. The interesting part about all this is that it was not a secret, although was trying to be refuted, is Northern Colorado did not pay their players or their coaching staff. Like the league was stepping in to pay their players. This is all officially rumor, but if you talk to any source that is around the organization, around the league, it is all but confirmed. The players and coaches were not being paid. League One is now withholding their winnings from the Jägermeister Cup. This is personal conjecture. When this goes to court, if this goes to court, the USL is going to come out and say, what about all the money that you owe us that we paid for your players? You owe us money.
And that would be
And
my guess in all of this is that they are taking, and I imagine that this is, and we're probably writing their defense for them with this particular idea, that they are taking the monies that were won from Jägermeister Cup and defraying the costs that were incurred when Northern Colorado was still playing in competitions under the USL League One umbrella and the USL umbrella. It's like, okay, well, we had, they come out with receipts basically. It's like, okay, receipt, countered against the six figures that they won in Jägermeister Cup. That's my guess as to what we would anticipate here.
yeah, this is where I want to be really careful on what I have with sources because this is an active legal situation. So this
Understood.
is where I have to be very careful.
Understood.
The general conversation is you owe us money. we had your money.
Mhm.
You no longer owe that much money. Um, and this is where personal conjecture comes back in.
Got it.
If I am looking between the tea leaves, I am seeing what I'm going to guess if they make it all the way to court,
Mhm.
if this is going to turn into judge is going to see this and say, "Hey, yes, USL, you owe Northern Colorado $100,000. Give them $100,000." Judge is going to immediately look at Northern Colorado and say, "Give them $100,000 back and plus whatever you owe them." Yes, that money is yours, but you still owe them. This is going to get paid out. Where it's just going to be a bunch of we're going to have money exchange hands just for you to immediately give it back to us because we have to say that you got paid, but you still owe them. And something tells me that when all that is said, they're just going to withdraw the lawsuit and say this is stupid and this is a waste of our time and money. Um, there is also the side of we don't know exactly how much money is owed by Northern Colorado, but if they went months without paying wages, to anybody, it
Yeah.
has to be more than this $100,000, where Northern Colorado is really, really treading on thin ice because what's stopping the USL from countersuing to, not only just, what's the word, to pay what they owe,
Yeah.
but
Reclaim.
also for damages to what they are doing to the league reputation of putting them through a lawsuit.
Right.
There is no world where Northern Colorado comes out of this making any money back. It's just a bizarre situation.
And you mentioned the regionalization of USL Championship League One,
Mhm.
and the when USL League One came online, it was the hope and desire that over time you would have these regional hubs of competition, and then these regional hubs would play amongst themselves. You would have ideas where you're not spending as much money on travel because I know that the nonstop flights from Statesboro to Fresno or Statesboro to Spokane, they happen every hour on the hour out of Bullitt County International Airport. I know that I know this for a fact, and that my tongue is firmly planted in my cheek when I say this. But when you have all of these new teams coming online, USL League One may end up being the bellwether here in making sure that the USL is getting that plan together. League One may be the ones to show USL Championship how to proceed quickly and do it to where you have these hubs that are here because of AV Alta coming online, Texoma coming online, Corpus Christi coming online, Westchester, and who am I missing coming online for League One, because Lexington is going to championship. Oh,
Yes,
Naples and Portland.
Naples. Yep.
So AV Alta, Corpus Christi, FC Naples, Portland, Maine, Texoma, and Westchester Soccer Club. They're all coming online. Lexington is going up to championship, but I think that League One is getting closer and closer to that regionalization idea where you do have a true East and a true West, and then you might have the occasional crossover and you get that true champion. They might be the ones to show USL Championship how to operate, as you say, going to the three divisions and making sure that they're not pulling their hair out come 2025, because you don't know who's going to make it to 2025 at this point with
Yep.
the issues in Miami, with the issues in Northern Colorado, and with Memphis 901 off the board.
There's also and this is, by the way, this is just kinda all live reactions. This is just stuff that's being sent to my email right now.
Okay.
Um, where allegedly, Fuego's, stadium is taking out the Fuego stands, like, where they play at Fresno is removing the stands right now.
Okay.
So, who knows what that means for them? They also just built a training facility, so we'll see what that all that means. But, again, these regionalizations where the West was kinda hinging on Santa Barbara, right? Where FC Tucson was supposed to be back, like, 2 years ago, and there is no rumors out of them of even returning.
Mhm.
If an if anything, there seems like they're pulling out of paying because their Super League team is kind of up in smoke right now, where we're seeing just kind of teams falling apart here, and I think that League One may have rushed themselves to exist because we are seeing they had this wonderful idea of starting right away and bringing in owners when they can see, hey, we have something on the field, and they brought in the owners. It's worked, but they never got enough. And just like I said, like the capital that's attached to a League One team is just not worth the losses that are also attached to it. Um, the it has to regionalize. It simply has to. You don't you just don't have a choice anymore because would you rather, if you're an owner, like I said, would you rather fly and charter as much as a USL championship team, if not more, take on even more losses because you're not pulling in the gate receipts and be worth less? There's no world where a reasonable person says that. And there's going to be somebody in the chat that's going to come in later and just be like, well, this is why we need promotion relegation. Sure. That's a great idea. Awesome. I'm glad we can have that conversation. But right now, we're trying to fix a solution to what we currently have. The answer is probably promotion relegation, and you attach something else to it. The USL turns into, you have a premier division, and we're all happy go lucky 3-team or 3-division promotion relegation. That's an awesome idea. Love that. But we have to fix what we have now, and it has to regionalize because we're going to see more and more teams run away from League One as fast as they can. And we're going to see championship teams who just do not want to be in League One.
At the USL show on all the social medias, at Kaylor Hodges on all the social medias, what just when you thought that all you were going to be doing was talking about playoffs and championships, you got all this off the field stuff going on. What's the next steps talking about all the other things there at the USL show?
Well, Tuesday, same time as always, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, 6 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. We're going to probably open up with Northern Colorado as we get more information, but then we're going to go to the League One finals, and then we're going to talk about the USL Championship finals after that. This offseason is going to be interesting because we're going to be able to fully dive into the USL Super League regular season where we haven't had really the time to do so before, but it's also going to lead to a lot more conversation of free agents because there's going to be a lot of those out of Memphis that are going to be fought for heavily, and alleged other teams that are looking like they will not exist either soon. Um, and a whole bunch of other just legal cases that we're having to deal with, and start getting good at being a lawyer because there's no world where I should be reading legal documents, but I do it a lot more than I should, and that's bizarre.
No doubt about it, and we gotta make sure that we have legal folks on retainer when it comes to understanding everything going on in the USL Championship, USL League One, and the Super League. Kaylor, as always, my friend, great for your expertise and everything that you guys do there at the USL show. We'll catch up with you on Tuesday, 10:30 Eastern time, and we talk about a champ and we talk about a final. Thanks for dropping by as always, my friend.
Of course, thank you for having me.